This is Gemara Nedarim Daf Lamid Ches, and we're holding at the bottom of Lamid Zayin Amid Beis, and we finished off with a pasuk that taught us all these different sources. Vayivinu b'mikra is Pisuk Taimim, and before we even begin, I want to correct that we said at the end of yesterday that V'yikru b'sefer Torah Elokim ze mikra mefurash ze targum elu apsukim, excuse me. The same zeichel elu apsukim. No, that's not the part I wanted to correct. One more. Where is it? I want to correct what iter seifrim is. Amar Rav Yitzchak. Okay, so that's the easiest way to do this. Let's go back for one moment. We're going to go up to about 12 lines to the bottom of Lamed Zayin Mebeis. The first one line is Va'amri La. And Amar Rav Yitzchak. This is really the beginning of this piece. So let's pick it up from here. Amar Rav Yitzchak. Mikra Seifrim, the reading of the Seifrim. What does that mean? What the Seifrim are reading? So this means we're going to see this is the vowelization of the words that don't have vowels. Torah doesn't have vowels. So what is the appropriate way of reading different words? The Iter Seifrim. So I believe yesterday I said that Iter Seifrim is like a Torah, like a crown, and it's referring to the Sefer putting the crowns on top. That is absolutely incorrect. It's not referring to the crowns that the Sefer puts on top, or rather, if we look at the Ran over here on the second medium-sized line, the Ran says, Iter Sefer, it is the word Atara, an embellishment. It's the Tevois Yiseirois, says the Ran, the extra words that are written to enhance the language of Nikrois Iter Lefishin Ma'atrin es Haloshin. So they are crowns, but they're more figurative crowns. These are ways, stylistic words that add to the contextual meaning of psukim, as we'll see in a moment. Ukriyan are all halacha l'Moshe misinai. So now we're going to go through the first part of today's shiur. Is going to be basically going through all these different examples of what these entities are, and then this is going to take us to whole Amida. Let's see. Mikra Seifrim, says the Gemara. What is this Mikra Seifrim? The Seifrim describes the reading Eretz Shamayim. It's Eretz and Aretz, Shamayim and Shamayim, and Mitzrayim and Mitzrayim. The way that it is read, that's what it's referred to. That is a halacha l'Moshe misinai. Iter Seifrim. What is these Iter Seifrim? Like we just learned to the Ran, these embellishments. Achar ta'avayru. Afterwards, they will, or not afterwards, then they will pass on. Now that word achar, then, is really not necessary. So to add it in, to embellish, to give the pasuk a bit more stylistic meaning. Achar tilech. Similarly, then they will go. Again, in each of these psukim, let's just read this one. Achar tilech. Vayomer achia v'ima. Tishav anayra yitanu yamim. Asar achar tilech. Then she will go. So why do we have to say then she will go? If it just says she will go, obviously it's following what was going on. So these are Iter Seifrim, these are literally crowns, these are stylistic words that are added to the Torah. And these are all Lach L'Moshe Misinai. Achar Te'asif. The pasuk continues, then she'll be brought in. Again, the word achar is not necessary. Kidmu, sarim, achar noignim. First were the sarim, the singers, v'achar noignim, and then were the musicians. Again, it couldn't say kidmu sarim, v'noignim, which would have meant this is first. Kidmu, the sarim came first, and then the noignim, then the musicians. So in each one of these examples, achar is a bit extraneous. Sidkoscha kariel, it's a bit more famous. We know this pasuk that your righteousness is mighty as mountains. Again, sidkasecha. It could have said kischascha harureel. Why did it say ki harureel? The extra chaf like mountains should have said your righteousness, and then we would have known it's equating it to mountains. Continues the Gemara 5 lines to the bottom. Kriyan v'lo ksivan. What's an example of a kriya, not a ksiv? Paras divelechtai. That the word pras referring to the Euphrates River, in the pasuk of Dibelechtai, that is that the word pras is read, but it's not actually there. So of course, this is an interesting element if no one has ever understood this. But if you look at the pasuk in the Torah, well, it's not a pasuk in Torah, it's a pasuk in Nach. Is this a pasuk in Nach? Where is this pasuk? Yes, this pasuk in Shmuel. The word pras does not exist, but we read the word pras. That is the kri v'loi ksivan, or ish. The word ish in the kasher Yisrael ish b'davar elikim ba'uim v'nivnasa la de plita. Similarly, the word la in the pasuk about plata, and as hugad as the hugad as well. Eli de hagoyren, Eli dasairin. All of these halon kriyan v'loi ksivan. These are read, although the words themselves do not actually appear in the Nach, but they are read. Anyone who's ever gotten off Torah and actually read it, you'll notice that there's always these extra words, and that's the kris without the ksevs that you read it, even though it doesn't actually exist there. Uksavim like kriya. Now we have the opposite. Words that are written that we don't actually read. Na di yitzlach. The word na in the pasuk of yitzlach, and we turn over to Lamir Ches Amir Aleph, and continues the Gemara with these examples of, now we're up to Kri V'loi Ksivan. Says the Gemara, Zois de HaMitzvah. The word Zois in the pasuk let's get that back. The word Zois in the pasuk referring to HaMitzvah. And similarly, Yidroich da Haderich Pa'as da Negev. And again, all of these, you have to really go look up the psukim in the Chigayel Halan. All of these are Ksivan V'loi Kriyan. And that is the example of all these things that Rav Yitzchak taught us are halacha leMoshe miSinai. Continues the Gemara that Amar Rav Acha Bar Ada b'Marava in the west, referred to Eretz when he came to Bavel from Eretz Yisrael, Paskan lahadin, psuka detlas of psuka. Another din about psukim, they would split up this pasuk into 3 psukim. Vayomer Hashem al Moshe enochi ba'ilecha ba'av ha'anan. They made this into 3 psukim. So earlier on, yesterday, we spoke about a pasuk that showed that you cannot take wages, you cannot get paid for teaching Torah, and that was learned from the pasuk about Moshe Rabbeinu. So says the Gemara today, darshin that pasuk slightly differently. Amar Rav Chama, we're 6 lines down. Amar Chesam and Alv Rav Chanina lo hesher Moshe Ella mipsayla shaluchais. How did Moshe Rabbeinu get wealthy? From the fragments, from the leftovers of the luchais. Shenamar, as the Torah teaches, psalecha shnei luchais avanim kari shainim. You should carve like it was in the beginning, and we darshim psaltan, the psailes, the leftover of these stones, shalcha yehei, they should be yours, Moshe Rabbeinu, and that's how he attained extreme wealth. Amar Rav Yossi Rav Chanina lo nina Torah ella leMoshe u'lezari. Now here comes, for those who've never learned this Gemara, an absolutely astounding Gemara. Teaches the Gemara, the Torah was given to Moshe Rabbeinu, not to Klal Yisrael, u'lezaroi, and to Moshe Rabbeinu's descendants. Shenamar, as the pasuk teaches, the pasuk that we're in the middle of talking about, psal lecha, it's for you, Moshe Rabbeinu. Ma psaltan shelcha, just like the remnants of yours, avksavan shelcha. And then Moshe nag b'toivus ayin. Moshe had the most beautiful eye. Moshe was very giving. V'nitna li Yisrael. And then Moshe, in his own volition, went and gave the Torah to Klal Yisrael. V'alav hakasav ayman. Regarding this, the pasuk says, "Toiv ayin hu yivayrach." You have a beautiful eye, Moshe Rabbeinu, that is blessed. So this is a fascinating comment, says the Gemara, that the Torah really was for Moshe himself, and only afterwards did Moshe go and decide he's going to share it, we'll call it, with Klal Yisrael. So I asked the Gemara now numerous questions on this idea, on this suggestion that the Torah was really purely for Moshe Rabbeinu. Masiv Rav Chisda. As Rav Chisda, V'oisi siva Hashem be'isehi, and I was commanded by Hashem at that time, lilamed, to teach eschem, to you. So what do we see? The pasuk seems to clearly indicate that Moshe Rabbeinu is teaching that he was given the Torah to do what? Lilamed eschem, to teach to you. So how are you suggesting the Torah was for Moshe himself? The pasuk says it was to teach for you. Answers the Gemara, Va'isi Siva. The pasuk could be explained. Va'isi, and I was Siva. Va'ani, and I lochem. I decided to give it to you. Another pasuk. See that I give you today. I teach you today the chuk mishpatim. Kasher Sivani Hashem Elikai. So again, what does the pasuk seem to indicate? That Moshe was told to teach the Torah to Klal Yisrael. Answers the Gemara, no. I see Siva Vani Lachem. Moshe really was for himself, and he willingly shared it with Klal Yisrael. And the third and final question, V'ata Kisu Lachem. Excuse me, not a final question. V'ata Kisu Lachem is a shir azais. And now write down this song, Hashira L'chuda. So again, what do we see? And the pasuk continues, V'lamda es b'nei Yisrael, to teach the Klal Yisrael. So answers the Gemara, Hashira L'chuda. You're right. There was something that had to have been taught to Klal Yisrael, but it was not the entirety of the Torah. It was what? The Shira, the song itself. And the pasuk continues, Laman tia li hashira hazois la'ad b'bnei Yisrael. 1 second. But the pasuk says that the song should be for all of Klal Yisrael. So what do we see? We see that not only was the shira given, because the pasuk is referring to the bris that Hashem made with the Klal Yisrael, so we see that there was more than just the shira. So answers the Gemara, Ella pilpula de alma. Rather, the halachais were intended to give to Klal Yisrael. The Gemara is now switching. Pilpula de alma. It was the pilpul that was for Moshe Rabbeinu himself. This is all the halacha Moshe Misinais, and then that Moshe gave over. So again, it's a startling contrast in the Havamina and the Maskana. In the Havamina here, we thought the entirety of the Torah was not necessarily for all of Klal Yisrael. The Gemara is answering that it was, but rather there were other halachas that were specific for Moshe, and those he so lovingly shared. Continues the Gemara about 25 lines down. The first one line is Amar. Amar Rav Yochanan. Ein HaKadosh Baruch Hu mishashchina soy elo al gibar v'ashachacham v'anav. Once we're the topic of the greatest man to ever live, Moshe Rabbeinu, says the Gemara, where does the Shechina rest itself? On a giver, strong, usher, wealthy, chacham, wise, anav, humble. V'kulan mi Moshe. We learn them all out from Moshe Rabbeinu. Says the Gemara, giver, where do we see that Moshe was strong? Says the Pasuk Mishkan, that he spread out the tent over the Mishkan. V'amar Emar taught Moshe Rabbeinu Parsoi. Moshe Rabbeinu by himself spread out the tent over the Mishkan, Uksiv, and that is Uksiv, and the Pasuk says Eser Amois Oirech HaKeresh. That each Keresh was 10 Amois, and the fact that Moshe Rabbeinu was able to do it himself, obviously he was quite a gibor. Says the Gemara, 1 second, maybe not. Ema d'arach v'katan. Maybe Moshe Rabbeinu was very tall, but katan, he was thin. So maybe the way he was able to set up the Mishkan, because he was so tall, but doesn't mean he was strong. Ela min hadein kara. Rather, we learn out from the following pasuk, the siv that says ve'es Pois b'shnei aluchais v'ashicha me'al shtei yadai. Moshe Rabbeinu was holding the two luchas, and they were thrown from his hand. V'shabrim, and I'll break them. V'tanya, we learned in a Bryce. Ha'aluchais arkan shisha v'rachman shisha. The luchas, how big were they? They were 6 tfachim by 6 tfachim. Arkan shisha v'rachman shisha v'avyan shleisha. They were 6 by 6 by 3, and to be able to hold a stone that is 6 tfachim, something like, 16, 18 inches, 1.5 feet of pure stone by 6 tvachim, by 3 tvachim deep, quite the large item, which by the way, we see that they were also squares and not rounded. So what do we see? Moshe Rabbeinu was obviously very strong. Continues the Gemara, 5 lines from the medium-sized lines. Ashir, Moshe Rabbeinu was wealthy, as we've seen already. That the remainder of the luchas was for himself. Yay, Chacham, where do we see? He was smart. Rav Shmuel Chamishim Shari Bina. There were 50 gates of understanding, nivru, that were created by Elam in the world. V'kulam nitna limoshe, and all these 50 gates were given to Moshe Rabbeinu. Chasar achas, -1. He got 49. Shneimar v'chaseu me'at me'eloikim. Anav, Moshe Rabbeinu was a humble person. Anyone learning V'sil Sisharim, we're learning about Gaiva and Anava. Tersev, Vayesh Moshe Anav Me'oid. And that's what we learn, that what does the Shechina rest upon? Such an incredible person like Moshe Rabbeinu, Gibor Asher Chacham, and Anav. Amar Rav Yochanan continues. The Gemara teaches Rav Yochanan moving along to the first narrow line. Kol Neviim Ashirim Ayu. All the Neviim were wealthy. Minal mi Moshe Mishmol mi Almos ume Yaina. We learned this out from the four great Neviim of Moshe Shmuel, Amos, and Yaina. Moshe, where do we know Moshe was wealthy? As we've seen, Lo Chamer Echan. Now the Gemara now brings a different source. Lo Chamer Echan Mem Nasasi. Says the pasuk, I have not even given a single donkey I have not even taken one donkey, says Moshe Rabbeinu from Klal Yisrael. Ibeloi Agra. If the pasuk means that Moshe didn't take a donkey without payment, afuke man, what's it coming to exclude the shakal b'loi agra? What Moshe Rabbeinu would take something without payment? It can't be ela da'afilu be'agra. Even with payment, he never took away a donkey. And why not? Must be because Moshe Rabbeinu was extremely wealthy, and therefore he never needed transport from someone else's donkey, even for pay. And that is how we see Moshe Rabbeinu was wealthy. Answers the Gemara, no, maybe the exact opposite. Maybe Moshe Rabbeinu was very poor, and the reason why he didn't take someone's donkey for transportation was because he could not afford the Rolls Royce of a donkey. Answers of the Gemara, as we've seen that the psilas, the remnants of the luchais, Moshe Rabbeinu kept. Shmuel, number 2. Shmuel Anavi was wealthy. Dichsev, as we see in the first very wide line, Hinei Anav bi neged Hashem. Says Shmuel Anavi, here I am. I test anu bi neged Hashem. I testify against the opposite Hashem neged Mashiach is shar. And the ox mi lakachti v'chor li lakachti. So now again, a similar drasha. If it's that he didn't take it for free, lafukiman, what's it coming to exclude the shagol bechinam, that he would have taken it for, he would have taken the ox without paying? What, do you think Shmuel was going to rob someone of his animal? Elafuki bischar. You know what it means? That even with schar he didn't take it. Ask the Gemara 1 second. Maybe it's because he was very poor again. Says the pasuk, "Useshuvase haramasa kisham beisay." You should turn to Ramasa, for that is where his home was. V'amar Rava, kol makom shalach beisay yimay. Wherever Shmuel Anavi went, his house was with him. That's how wealthy he was, that he traveled with the entire entourage. Amar Rava Gadol Ma Shenemer B'Shmuel Yosef B'Shnemer Moshe. That which says by Shmuel is greater than that which says by Moshe. Why? Dilu b'Moshe Rabbeinu Ksev Lo Chamer Echem Yem Nesasi Ta'afilu B'Schar. That he didn't even take it with wages. Even Shmuel didn't even take it. B'Ratzain didn't even take it. Well, and Amos, Navi number 3 that was wealthy was Amos, and Amos responded by Yomer, and he says, Alamatzia, Loi Navi Anoich V'lo Ben Navi Anochi Ki Boiker Anochi Uboiles Shkamim, that said, Amos, what am I? I'm not a prophet, nor the son of a prophet. I'm a simple cattle herder and an examiner, and I look at shikamim, sycamore trees. And the argument of Rav Yosef translates this pasuk of Ari, Marei Keisei Anav Shikman Li Bishafelta. Says Rav Yosef, I'm the owner of cattle, and I have the sycamores all over the place. So we see that Amos had quite the real estate, quite the property. And finally, Yoina Dersev, Yoina was the 4th wealthy Navi. The pasuk says in Yoina he paid and he boarded the boat. On 4 lines at the bottom of Chaf, Lamed Chesed and Aleph. She'nosan schara shel sfina kula. Yoina Navi, he paid for the entire boat. Amarav Rumnis schara shel sfina avodah love dinner dava 4,000 golden dinar. Amarav Yichon betchila yamay shalom hatayra umashcha achenasna leitayra. Such a chizik Moshe Rabbeinu originally would learn Torah and he would forget it until it was given to him as a matana. She'enamar, the pasuk eaten on Moshe v'kikalois l'daber Yitay, was given to him. So what do we see? Of course, we need the hard work, but we need to have the siyata d'shmaya. We need to have the heavenly assistance in order to be able to learn Torah, an incredible chizik. And we move on to a new Mishnah on the bottom of Lamed Chesed and Aleph, continuing the discussion of what one is allowed to do for someone else that he is Maider Hana from him. Says the Mishnah of Zanish Ishtavas, one of you allowed to feed that person's wife and children, even though he himself is obligated to support them. So you would think by you giving his wife a kid, you are directly benefiting him and you're not allowed to because it's a neder hana. Still, you're allowed to. But you're not allowed to feed his animals, neither tahar nor tamei. Because the fact that his tamei animal gets nice and fat, who cares? He's not eating it. What's the difference? Amr lahu shata'ira nafshel l'shamaya. The gufa shaloi, a tar animal, the nefesh is a lashamayim, because you can bring it as a carbon, and the guf, the body, belongs to the owner, whereas a tameya, an unkosher animal, says the Gemara, as we turn over to Lamid Ches Amid Beis, nafsha v'gufa lashamayim. When it comes to a not kosher animal, both the nefesh and the guf, everything goes to shamayim. Now what does it mean? Everyone is wondering, what does it mean everything goes to Shemayim if this animal is not going to be a carbon? So the Ran, right away over here in the top line, speaks out that, the Mefayrish, which is labeled as Rashi over here, speaks out, let's just get it up, there it is, that's what it means that it goes to Shamayim. Doesn't mean that actually it's a carbon, but rather what it means is that it dissipates to thin air. Amrullah, back into the Mishnah. Amrullah, says the Gemara, one more time. Amrullah, the Chachamim, we're back in the Mishnah. The Chachamim said to Rav Eliezer, Afa tameya nafshala shamayim begufa shaloi, even a tamli animal, he only gets the gov shem yirtza, meaning, even by a tummy animal, there is a benefit that is had in order for the animal to be nice and fat, because you could sell it to a non-Jew. So says the Gemara, let's delve a bit deeper into our Mishnah. Amar Rav Yitzchak bar Chanani, Amar Rav Huna. Ha-moider hana mechaveiroi moter lahasi loi. So makes a neder hana from his friend. What are you allowed to do? You're allowed to marry his daughter. So even though he himself, you're not allowed to get benefit from. However, says the Gemara, says Rav Yitzchak bar Chananya, but you are allowed to marry that person's daughter. Marrying his daughter is not considered that he gave you hana. Haveba Rav Zera. So says the Gemara, 6 lines down, Lamachasam in the base. Rav Zera was wondering, B'mai askinon, what exactly is the case? If you're going to tell me, if the case is like we just thought, that the property of the father of the kala is forbidden on the chasan, I don't understand. So the father is giving you benefit, he gave you his daughter. At the very least, this wife is what? A shivcha. Not nice to call one's wife, but at the very least, she's going to help you in menial tasks, says the Gemara. So why isn't that called alna? Ella b'nichsei chasan asur al avihi hakalos. The Gemara flips it, that one must be talking about that the chasan's estate is forbidden on the father of the kala, and that is the halacha that you're allowed to marry the person. Why? The marriage itself is not called benefiting the father of the kala. Says the Gemara, but Gedoyla Mizu Amru. Beautiful dinner of Yitzhak Chananya. But our Mishnah really taught us even more. The Mishnah said, Zon es Ishtay ves Banav, that what are you allowed to do if Reuven is Menader Hana from Shimon? Reuven is allowed to feed Shimon's wife and children. Even though Shimon himself really has to feed his wife and kids, so still you're allowed to feed them. It's not called enough for some reason. And you're telling me a smaller chiddush. Of course you can marry his daughter. If you're even allowed to go and give straight direct benefit to the wife and children by supporting them, which is really straight and direct benefit to the father, certainly you can marry the daughter. So answers the Gemara, you're right. La'ilam, says the Gemara. What or about 12 lines down, the first one line is Avi. Really, the case is that the properties of the father of the Kala are forbidden of the Chassan. Ubebitai boy geres umidaita. And if that's the case, the question was that, wait, the father is benefiting you in the fact that he gave you a shivcha. Says the Gemara, no. We're not talking about a ketana that the father gives her over. We're talking about a boy geres that she has das on her own. And therefore, the chassid is not receiving benefit from the father-in-law. Tani nami hachi, we have a right to this. Amodir na mechaveroi, aser laser loy bitoy, avol masiyoi bitoy boy geres umidaita, because the fact that she has her own das is not called that you're giving benefit to the father. Continues the Gemara, and we're going to conclude with a little bit of a lighter note. Amar Rav Yaakov, Hamadir b'noi l'talmud Torah. Someone makes a neder, he really wants his son to be a Talmud Chacham, and he says, I'm not getting any benefit from his son, I want him to be pure, clean, pristine for Talmud Torah. Still, says the Gemara, the son is allowed to do the basics for the father. The son is allowed to fill up his father's jug of water and and to light a candle for him, because these are very small acts, very small benefits, and they're benefits that he could do without taking off from his Torah. The child's allowed to do for his father. Rav Yitzchak Omer, a different example, Litzalois Loi Dag Katam, what's he allowed to do? He's allowed to fry a small fish for the father. You're allowed to fill up and give him a koshel shalom. What is that? And again, this is similar to the case of the son, that the koshel shalom is not considered benefiting the person that there is a neder hana from. Says the Gemara, what is this case of koshel shalom in the last narrow line of Lamechasam Beis? Hacha targimoy, over here they explained, Kais shall base avel. It's a certain drink they would give in the base. Avel tarbarmrava amri. Kais shall base hamerchatz. No, it's a drink after one uses the bathhouse. After one sits in the schwitz and he's sweating away, he needs to take a drink. So they would give him a hot drink when he would leave the bathhouse to help him regain his strength. And you're not allowed to feed his animals, both tar and tameh. And Rav Lezer said you could feed the tameh but not the tar. You're allowed to feed his servants. My taima, when it comes to the servants, then what? They could be torn apart. And therefore what? He's not going to gain anything if the servant is a bit fatter. Avidan. But an animal you gain if they are a bit fatter. The fact that a slave has a bit of extra food does not necessarily give the master benefit, but the fact that the animal does, whether kosher or not, gives the owner a benefit. And we'll pick up from the Mishnah B'siyata D'Shmaya in the next shir.